Propwash Ranch. In this video, we're going to talk about mountain operations, how to operate around mountains safely, how to enter situations, and how to evaluate situations, how to get yourself out of certain situations around the mountains, and about flight planning around the mountainous terrain that we have here in the Rockies. I have a whiteboard to help me demonstrate, but the best way to learn is in the airplane. So let's go.
Is how the wind reacts around mountains when it hits a mountain. On a mountain, when the wind is blowing, there's a windward side and a leeward side. You know what? The whiteboard was the best way to explain this. Let's go back to the whiteboard.
I'm going to draw a very perfect mountain. There's my very perfect mountain. And then we have a windward side and a leeward side. The windward side is the side that the wind is coming from. So this is the windward side. The wind will hit the slope of the mountain and follow up the slope. So on the windward side, if you're flying on the windward side, you will have updrafts and relatively stable air because the mountain hasn't had time to disrupt the air yet. Once it makes the crest, it will accelerate the air, sometimes as much as doubling the velocity of the air, and then the wind will follow down the slope. So on the leeward side, you will have downdrafts, potentially very strong downdrafts. Then the wind will follow down into the valley, have a hydraulic lift, getting back up to altitude, and here is where it can start a rotor turbulence. So the windward side should be stable because the mountain hasn't interfered with the wind yet. On the leeward side is potentially very strong downdrafts and rotating turbulence that can overcome the roll authority of the aircraft.
Right now the winds are blowing pretty much in line with Mount Graham. So it makes it so there's no big windward side or leeward side. But when you get up along the mountain, there's several ridges that go up the mountain, and the same principle applies to the ridge as it comes along parallel with Mount Graham, but then it hits these ridges that are perpendicular to the wind. And when a ridge is perpendicular to the wind, that's where you get the updraft on the windward side, the downdraft on the leeward side, and then the hydraulic lift with the rotor turbulence. I'm flying with a tailwind right now, so I'm crossing over this ravine. Coming up to this, I'm going to experience an updraft that will push me up over this peak, and on the other side of this ridge, I'll experience the turbulence. So I should get some lift through here a little bit, and then once I cross it, turbulence right there. On the windward side, you have updrafts and stable air. You can surf it, and you can get more efficiency out of it. On the downdraft side, the leeward side, it's less efficient, it slows you down, and the air is trying to push you into the ground. Right now, the wind is less than 10 knots, and it's not producing enough turbulence for it to push the plane around any significant amount. You can probably see I'm bouncing a little bit, but I'm not bouncing very much. When you cross a ridge, you want to do it at a 45-degree angle. the same as going through a mountain pass, so that it gives you more time. There's less degrees that you need to turn through to get back into the descending terrain, and it takes less time and uses less distance. As you're approaching a ridge to fly through, you want to watch the terrain on the other side as you approach the ridge and see if the terrain is growing or shrinking. If it's growing and you're able to see farther and farther down the terrain, the valley, or the mountain, whatever on the other side, then that means that you have enough altitude to clear it. You are over the top of the ridge. If the terrain is shrinking, then that means that you're below it, below the ridge that's in front of you. Provided you have it cleared, you want to approach it at a 45-degree angle so that you can turn into descending terrain in the event of a severe downdraft or mechanical issues. Paying attention to the leeward side and the windward side. This is just beautiful up here. So you can see that the ground is coming up underneath me, and my distance above ground level is decreasing really rapidly. This peak comes right up underneath me, and I go from 5,000 feet above ground to 800 feet above ground when I'm going through this pass. But the terrain slopes so rapidly that I don't need to worry about the terrain coming up so close. In the event of mechanical difficulties or severe downdraft, I can turn into descending terrain, and my glide ratio far exceeds the slope, the downward slope of this mountain. This peak here to the west, off my right, is going to be generating a downdraft. But then there's another peak here, just off to my left. That peak will be generating an updraft. So I am hugging the updraft side so that I can ride this updraft, and I can feel it right now. Actually, the aircraft's being lifted. And I'm approaching this this saddle at a 45-degree angle, and all the while I am ready to turn back. If I suddenly experience a strong downdraft, then I will turn back to the descending terrain, and I can make it all the way, even up through this saddle. I could still make the turn, but right now there's no point because now I can glide through it. There's mountains, there's Mount Graham right off to my left, at 11,000 feet. But as we spin around 360 degrees, I'm at 7,000 feet right now. Every one of these mountains around me, just to the north here we have the Bryce Mountains as we spin around. Every one of these peaks is higher than I am right now. That's just how it is here in Arizona. And this whole part of the country, going clear up, you follow the Rockies all the way up to Canada. Just these massive mountain ranges. For example, Mount Graham right in front of me, it's higher than I want to climb over. If I'm doing cross country, if you are plotting a course from A to B with any kind of distance between it, there almost certainly will be mountains in between you. And almost always happens that in a straight line, you'll find yourself colliding with terrain. So if I was doing a cross country and it put me right over the top of Mount Graham here, I can see in flying this course right here, this puts me into the side of Mount Graham. To climb over this, I need 2,000 more feet. So instead of climbing, what I do, I will change my course just a couple degrees. It usually puts me within a mile of what my intended course is, to get to just the slightly lower part of the mountain to cross a ridge line. But pay attention to how strong the wind is and what direction the wind is going, and that might determine whether you want to turn left to avoid the peak or whether you want to turn right to avoid the peak. In this case, it's better for me to turn right to avoid this peak. Even though the left, the terrain drops off quicker, I know that that's taking me into the leeward side, which is going to have downdrafts. It's going to push me down. It's going to be less efficient. If I turn to the right, I have a little bit more distance to fly, but it takes me into updrafts, which is a more efficient way to fly. There's nothing wrong with doing that as long as the weather permits. I'm up pretty close to Mount Graham right now. There is very little turbulence. The winds are less than 10 knots. The updrafts and downdrafts are not that strong. There's not likely to be a downdraft more powerful than the aircraft's ability to climb. And in the event that there is, I can very easily turn into descending terrain and just surf that downdraft on down in descending terrain. You don't need to avoid the mountain completely. You just need to find a lower part of the mountain and understand what the wind is doing. When you understand what the wind is doing, golly, this is gorgeous. When you understand what the wind will do around the mountain, and at what velocity it will do it, then it takes a lot of the risk and a lot of the guesswork out of flying around a mountain. So understanding that can keep you out of a lot of the turbulence that mountains create. But with that being said, this rolling turbulence and the wave created from mountains can carry on for up to 100 miles. It will slowly dissipate, but it can go on for a long ways. And if you draw a straight line in any direction out here for 100 miles, there's going to be another mountain. So there are certainly days that are just turbulent, and there's no escaping it, and you can't get far enough away from a mountain to completely avoid all the turbulence. And it just makes for a really bumpy flight. There are a lot of days flying around here in southern Arizona that are just very bumpy. And on those days, I don't get up close to the mountains because the wind currents in the mountains can get very strong. Like I was saying on the whiteboard, the velocity at a crest of a mountain it can be double what the wind velocity actually is that day, which gets pretty severe pretty quickly. I love flying around these mountains. It's very rewarding. It's just beautiful terrain. Every time you get out, you learn something new. Every time I go up in the plane, I learn something new, and I become a better pilot for it. So get out, go on an adventure, go fly, go explore. You'll be smarter for it. I got to get back on the ground. I got some work to do back on the ranch before it gets dark, and the sun is setting earlier. Thanks for watching Propwash Ranch. Hope you all have a good day.
I have a whiteboard here to help demonstrate so I can draw out the